as presented in the Kenya Kwanza Manifesto. Your Excellency, when I make reference towards actualization of the Kenya Kwanza Manifesto, many people find me as a man at odds. And at times, they refer to me as the biblical Saul. But far from it, beyond being a fast learner, Your Excellency, and which I have realized that fast learning and even reading is not very common. Actually, I realize that it's just with a minority, based on some of the instances that I saw in our August House during the recent debate on the finance bill. But that is on a light touch, with a light touch. Both the Kenya Kwanza Manifesto and Azimio Coalition Manifesto, Your Excellency, had lots of resemblance. And I am proud that the late Right Honorable Raila Odinga, may his soul rest in eternal peace, saw it fit that coming together as a country was critical in the furtherance of much-needed economic reforms which have been overly delayed. And I had benefit, Your Excellency, of sharing with both of you on how you too wanted the economy of this country to be steered, including the setting up of the National Infrastructure Fund and even this Sovereign Wealth Fund. You too discussed into detail before we lost the late Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga. And I'm happy that the successor in the party, Dr. Oburu Oginga, has equally been a student of that kind of thinking and is helping you steer the two political formations in the same direction. So, Your Excellency, some of the proposals that are in the Sovereign Wealth Fund Bill 2025 are informed by lessons that we have learned and best practices from other countries that have experienced significant economic progress by putting in place economic measures that deliver economic stability or stabilization and optimization of intergenerational transfers. We studied successful models, just to give assurance to the public, from jurisdictions including Norway, Singapore, which I cannot even forget, Saudi Arabia, Botswana in Africa, Nigeria, Kuwait, Qatar, among others. So, Your Excellency, the fund will address three critical imperatives. I don't want to repeat those three imperatives. I think we have spoken about them here during the panel discussion. I just want to mention that from a governance perspective, very robust governance framework has been inbuilt into this act to ensure that its operations are fiscally prudent, subject to the Auditor General, Controller of Budget, Cabinet, and the National Assembly oversight, and guided by the National Treasury's financial assessment, thereby reinforcing transparency and accountability. To conclude, Your Excellency, I submit that this act is more about economic stabilization. It is more about strategic development and intergenerational equity. Again, I know we have many naysayers who have kept lecturing us on the need to have a sovereign wealth fund only when we have budget surpluses. Let me tell them, the best time to start was yesterday. The second best time to start is right now. Making today the critical window to take action. We must not have or drop excuses. We must build momentum instead of waiting for a perfect moment that may never come. For a practical example, look at the progress we are making on our savings. With the bold reforms ushered in by this government, the pension savings have almost doubled over the last 3 years. It is a clear demonstration of what bold, brave, and proactive leadership can deliver to its people. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. It is now my humble duty to invite your, let me seek guidance. Yeah, I am guided appropriately, Your Excellency. Now it is my pleasure to take this opportunity to invite my party leader, Dr. Oburu Oginga, the party leader of Orange Democratic Movement Party, who will come make his remarks And I will kindly ask him immediately, you are done, Daktari, you will invite the Deputy President, who will then proceed to invite the President. Thank you very much. Could we clap for the party leader of ODM as he comes?
Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, Your Excellency, the Deputy President of the Republic, and the Speaker of the National Assembly, and all protocols observed. Your Excellency, the idea of establishing a sovereign fund is a very, very progressive idea. I first learned about it when I went to Botswana, where all the wealth they generate from their mineral resources are put into a sovereign fund. And that sovereign fund is for the future generations. And Botswana is not a big country. It's not bigger than our country. I'm sure even in terms of mineral resources, they might not be richer than us if we do thorough investigations or prospecting. But Your Excellency, that fund is not just kept idle. That fund is invested in viable projects, not only in their country, but in neighboring countries. And even if the World Bank needs it, they give it to them, as long as their credit rating is good. And they don't need money from anywhere. They also use it for themselves to develop their own country. And what an idea. That instead of having a big heart, which makes you go to the big capitals, and instead of talking of trade and relationship based on sovereignty and on equality, you are going to beg. And the people you beg, and when they refuse, you get annoyed as if they are obliged to develop your country. They are not obliged to develop your country. The responsibility of developing your country is yours and yours alone. And therefore, Your Excellency, this idea is very transformative, just like the other ideas we have been toying around with, like this affordable housing. We have been in government. I was an assistant minister in finance. We tried to move, but private interests around who want to benefit from small infrastructure which does not move the country anywhere, always come in to put pressure on government not to move. And sometimes then there is too much democracy. There should be some little benevolent dictatorship so that some things can move. Mr. President, I don't want to say that you should be a dictator. I'm not saying that. But some of these things, like the social health fund, the SHA, I think people who are criticizing it don't know what, they don't go into details of what is happening. They don't know exactly what is happening. It's a very, very big transformation towards what we have been calling universal health care. We have tried, many governments have tried to introduce universal health care, and there is no other move which is nearer to the universal health care in this country than the SHA. We have covered now more than 30 million Kenyans have registered for SHA. And we have tried it before. We have tried to move on those directions. And we have not been able. We have not been able, Mr. President. And I think being bold and sometimes unpopular is not bad. It's good. Sometimes you introduce things which to some people appear unpopular, because being populist is really not helping the people. You must go down to the fundamentals and see whether you can move ahead, and people will realize very soon that some of these moves are very, very, very helpful to our country, and they are many, many steps ahead of what we have tried before. I'm an economist. I was working with the Ministry of Planning, and moving forward things were some of our vision. We tried. These civil servants, Your Excellency, they know a lot of things. Kenyans have developed a lot of theories, a lot of very good things, and they have been rotting in the cupboards and in the archives. And other countries come and pick them and go and use them for their own development. But I'm very happy, Your Excellency, that you are now trying to at least remove some of them from the shelves and pushing them forward so that our country can develop. And I thank you very much, everybody. I didn't know I was going to make a remark, but I thank you for the opportunity. Asante sana. It is now my honor to invite His Excellency, the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, Honorable Kithure Kindiki. Thank you. Karibu.
A round of applause for Mzee. Thank you very much. Mr. President, before I make a 2-minute remarks, let me invite the Speaker of the National Assembly just to say something, because I think today is a very consequential day for our country, and the Parliament of Kenya has been at the center of that consequence. Welcome, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you very much, Deputy President. Your Excellency, the President, I ride on all the protocols established. We say in Africa that he who stores food during harvest does not fear drought. And this is exactly what we are doing. The issue of sovereign wealth in our nation was a dream of our forefathers at independence. In the famous sessional paper number 10 of 1965, that we have been quoting in many different ways. The underlying message there was that the nation needed savings, and to save is for the future. When President Kibaki came into office, again, we prepared the economic recovery strategy for wealth creation with emphasis on savings. When the Jubilee administration came into office, again, the Sovereign Wealth Fund bill was proposed and attempted to be brought to Parliament. The emphasis, savings for the future. All these attempts did not get to fruition because I believe of the words in the scripture, Matthew 26:41, the spirit was willing, but the body was weak. Today, we have the spirit that is willing and the body is strong. And that's how we have come to where we are on the Sovereign Wealth Fund Act, emphasizing on savings, stabilization, and infrastructure. Your Excellency, the passage of this bill in the National Assembly is a milestone for the 13th Parliament. I'm proud that it has happened at the time when yours truly is the Speaker of the National Assembly of our country. It brought to the fore the quality of some of our members. At one point, it was debated until 9 p.m. in the night, and you could see the galaxy of professional cadre in the House. Economists, lawyers, accountants, educationists, environmental policy experts, engineers, and even those who don't belong to any of those, but who understood what it means to have a sovereign wealth reservoir. And I could see this, Your Excellency, when it came to the Committee of the Whole House. Members brought in very deep amendments. There's one member who triggered me to take them to winnowing, who listed amendments to delete all the paragraphs of the bill. And I called him to my office and asked him, what is it you want? He said, I wanted to trigger members to think. And when I brought the team together under the leadership of the chairperson of the Finance Committee and the majority leader, the product they brought back, I dare say, was one of the finest pieces of legislation that this Parliament has passed. And you could clearly see that our members do their research, they do their homework, they do their reading. Some of the amendments were quoting and citing provisions from Norway, from Singapore, from Botswana, from Nigeria, from Denmark. I was very impressed. And I feel proud that at this time in our history, we are working together and working together to the future. Your Excellency, today, as you assent to this bill, it sets the stage for this country to realize the provisions of Article 120 of our Constitution, which provides that the burdens and benefits of use of resources and public borrowing shall be shared equitably between the present and future generations. We have been told here, including by our young people, that we must strive to be remembered. And the people who are remembered for all the wrong things, you will be remembered, Your Excellency, among many things, for transforming this country and standing up to demonstrate that unlike the words of Jesus, your body and your spirit are both willing and strong. And that is what our country is headed to. Allow me, as I finish, Your Excellency, also on behalf of my team from Parliament, I'm here with my majority leader, our clerk, and a few MPs. The reason we don't have many MPs here is because they're on recess and elections are not too far away, so they are in their constituencies. But we can exercise some bragging rights as Parliament. Your Excellency, the 13th Parliament has passed milestone legislations to help this administration in transforming the country. To mention but a few, we've passed the Affordable Housing Act 2020. Enterprises 2025, the Judges Retirement Benefits Act 2026, which, Your Excellency, you remember the Chief Justice telling you that there was an attempt to change that act that was passed through colonial rule in 1948. And all attempts since independence failed until the 13th Parliament passed it. The Virtual Asset Service Providers Act, the Technopolis Act, the Climate Change Amendment Act, the Sugar Act. This particularly, Your Excellency, is a milestone. You remember when you came into office, all the sugar factories in the country, apart from a few private ones, had collapsed. And we are draining resources from the national treasury to pay farmers and workers in factories that were not working. Today, we can say with pride that the sugar farmer in Kenya is satisfied and happy because they harvest their cane on Monday, and by the following Monday, they have money in their accounts. Courtesy the reforms through the Sugar Act, the Social Protection Act, the Gambling Control Act, the Computer Misuse and Cyber Crimes Amendment Act, the National Infrastructure Fund Act, the Special Economic Zones Act, the Successive Finance Acts, and today, the Sovereign Wealth Fund Act. We feel very proud that in the history of our country, when eventually the writers of our history write, they say there was a 13th Parliament that supported the administration to realize what had eluded administrations since independence. Congratulations, Your Excellency, and on behalf of Parliament, we are ready, available, and willing to walk the journey of reforming our country. It needs men and women of vision, men and women of courage, and above all, people who do not fear criticism because it will always be there, to focus on what we must do and we will do to change our country. God bless you.
Mr. President, let me join all those who have spoken before me to congratulate you for leading our country into this remarkable occasion when we are witnessing the coming into force of one of the most consequential legislations in the history of our country that honors the requirements of our Constitution to use the natural resources we have for the benefit of both the present and future generations. Your Excellency, I have listened to all those who have spoken, the captains of industry who had very, very useful inputs and perspectives as we look towards implementation of this law. And as the person you have entrusted with supporting you as you deliver the mandate of leading our country, I have taken notes on all the inputs that have been suggested by private sector leaders and all the speakers who have spoken before me, including Speaker Wetangula, who spoke when I was standing there. I didn't have my notebook, but I have noted what he has said about what we need to do as we implement this law. And because I have done that job, and because also today is not my day, allow me to leave it there so that as we look forward towards the implementation of this law, we will support you as you lead us to transforming our country and doing the heavy lifting that we need to do so that the Kenya of tomorrow can be better than the Kenya of today. Once more, Mr. President, thank you very much for your leadership and vision. Welcome and speak to the nation.
Thank you very much. Please, let's take our seats. Asanteni sana. Your Excellencies, distinguished leaders, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to this, in my opinion, very consequential ceremony this morning. There are moments in the life of a nation when history is recorded not in years, but in months. In March this year, Kenya changed how it will finance its development to build the assets of the future through the National Infrastructure Fund that we brought into force. Today, Kenya changes again how it will preserve its wealth and its future. Today, we enshrine in law the institution that will ensure that the prosperity of those assets we create endures for generations, and that is the National Sovereign Wealth Fund. Let me state the principle plainly, because everything I say after this flows from it. If the National Infrastructure Fund builds the assets that grow our nation, the Sovereign Wealth Fund preserves and multiplies the wealth the assets create. I know there was a question asked to the panelists. I must congratulate all the panelists who spoke here for their candor in explaining to us from their perspective, from the private sector perspective, what they see in what we are doing as government. And the question was, we have the National Infrastructure Fund, now we have the Sovereign Wealth Fund. What is the difference and what is the connection? In my very simple understanding, the National Infrastructure Fund builds our present. You know very well that we have many projects, critical infrastructure that we are desirous of building as a nation. But on the other hand, we have limited resources on how to deliver on these very critical infrastructure projects. The National Infrastructure Fund creates the bridge between the infrastructure projects that we need for our growth and the resources that will unlock the capital for us to implement these projects. I will give you an example. We've just signed the contract for the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. It's going to be a 150 billion shilling project. We cannot build that project using our budget because it's heavy. So we will not borrow and we will not add additional taxes. What's going to happen is that we're going to use 20 billion shillings of the money we raised under our National Infrastructure Fund to crowd in the balance of the money from the private sector. That is how innovation works in the transformation of a nation. That is why in our midst here, we have fund managers, we have different investors, we have banks who are looking at the opportunity, pension funds who are looking at the opportunity to invest in Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. That is what NIF is going to do. But Sovereign Wealth Fund will connect the investment we are making in Jomo Kenyatta to the future generations. Because apart from benefiting from resources that will come from our natural resources in oil and minerals, we will also be investing profits that come from investment in our very critical infrastructure like Jomo Kenyatta in the Sovereign Wealth Fund, so that Lynn here and Ronnie and the young ones that came to witness this signing can have a portion of the investments we are making today for their future. So this is the connection that we are making between the present and the future. These are not isolated milestones. They are successive chapters in the deliberate transformation of our republic. Over the past 3 years, the bottom-up economic transformation agenda has restored stability, rebuilt confidence, strengthened our economy, and laid the foundations for sustained inclusive growth. With those foundations in place, we now transform how Kenya finances development, mobilizing domestic savings and private capital to build the assets of the future. But financing development is only half the journey. Today, we ask a different question. What do we do with the wealth, the assets we are building today, and the natural resources we are unlocking today? What are we doing about the future? Do we use it all in our lifetime? Or do we preserve part of it so that future generations inherit not just what we found, but the prosperity we created with what we found? Our Constitution answers that question long before we do. Article 201C provides that, and I quote, "The burdens and benefits of the use of resources and of public borrowing shall be shared equitably between present and future generations." End of quote. This is far more than a principle of public finance. It is a constitutional covenant between generations. Today, through the Sovereign Wealth Fund, we give practical effect to that constitutional promise in front of our children. Natural resources are different from taxation or ordinary economic production. They are finite by their nature. Once a barrel of oil is extracted, it can never be extracted again. Once a mineral deposit has been exhausted, it is gone forever. If one generation consumes all the proceeds from exhaustible resources, it leaves nothing but empty mines and depleted oil fields for those who come after. That is neither prudent economics nor responsible stewardship. Around the world, history offers powerful lessons. Kuwait began the journey in 1953. But perhaps the best known example is Norway, as has been stated here, which I had the privilege of visiting a few weeks ago. And I sat across the table with a minister who was present 30 years ago when they started their sovereign wealth fund. And I had a real eyeball-to-eyeball conversation because I knew that shortly I will be signing Kenya's sovereign wealth fund. And just imagine what has happened in one generation. Norway has done something phenomenal. In one generation, in 30 years, they have built the world's largest sovereign wealth fund. $2 trillion. $2.2 trillion. 280 trillion Kenya shillings. I mean, in just 30 years. So when I tell our good citizens that we can be a first world country in one generation, it is possible. If anybody had any doubt in their mind what is achievable with focus, courage, and determination, look at what Norway has done. Rather than consume all the wealth generated from its North Sea oil, Norway chose to invest for the future. Today, as I have said, its sovereign wealth fund is worth $2.2 trillion. It owns about 1.5% of all listed companies in the world, with investments in more than 7,200 companies across the globe, including Equity Bank, right here at home, 14% in James' own words. That is how transformation works. That is the power of disciplined investing and long-term thinking. Closer home, Botswana, again as has been said here, built the Pula Fund. Pula means rain. In a dry land like Botswana, setting up a reserve is not an indulgence. It is a survival strategy. Rwanda has done the same. Many other countries have done so. Today, Kenya proudly joins that community of nations that saves while they build. The lesson from each of these nations is unmistakable. Natural resources create opportunity. Institutions determine destiny. Without the right institutions, even great natural wealth can become a missed opportunity. Economists call this the resource curse. I dare say they give it the wrong name. The curse is not the resources. The curse is the failure in stewardship. Kenya has learned this lesson through experience. For many years, Kenya extracted titanium from the mineral sands of Kwale. It was one of the largest mining investments in our country's history. The minerals were extracted. Those deposits can never be mined again. What answer shall we give one day to our children when they ask us what happened to titanium? That is why this legislation that today becomes law in Kenya is consequential. So that never again will we mine or use resources without a trace for the future generations. Kenya is expected, and you have heard from Paul Ruto, to commence oil production from the Lokichar Basin in Turkana. For decades, that discovery has represented hope. Today, it also represents responsibility. The question before us is not simply whether Kenya will produce oil. The question is whether Kenya will manage the proceeds wisely. Every barrel extracted should become an asset that never runs dry. At the same time, we have completed the first comprehensive nationwide mineral survey in our country's history. That survey has confirmed what many suspected for years, that Kenya is endowed with significant deposits